Not a great spot to start for Coach here, but we have Coach and GM Omar Khan. I mean, he's adjusting, but it looks like he's having a midlife crisis or an existential crisis at the moment, but I'm sure he's just adjusting. But we have them in a pre draft press conference.
Great to see you guys. Appreciate you guys being here. I wanted to start off by just reiterating how excited we all are about the draft being here in Pittsburgh. It's long overdue, and I know personally, I always tell people how great the region is and how great the people is. People are here in the community, and it's exciting that there's a lot of them are going to experience it this week, and so excited, and I'm sure. We're going to make the NFL proud here in Pittsburgh. So a couple of things I want to touch base on before we take any questions. On Aaron, I know you guys are going to ask me on Aaron. We've had some great communication with Aaron, and nothing's changed, but it's all been positive and good. And, I said this to you guys in March when we met. He knows how we feel about him, and, we know how he feels about us. And So also on Broderick, I know you guys will ask me about Broderick. Nothing's changed with Broderick. He's still working to try to get back to where he needs to be. Nothing's changed there, and no new information since we last spoke in March. I also want to take a moment to just really thank Coach McCarthy and his staff for all the hard work they put into this draft process. This has been really difficult for them. I'm sure it's a lot. We haven't done this in a long time, but just seeing all that it's taken for them to get ready to get to this point from the football standpoint, and obviously some personal stuff with getting acclimated to Pittsburgh, and they've done a tremendous job, and I've put a lot on their plate over the last 6 weeks, and really proud about our process and how it came together, and obviously I also like to thank my staff. Can't say enough about my scouting staff. They're second to none in my eyes, and they've really worked hard and love where we're at. Obviously, we got 12 picks. I don't know, come Saturday when I meet with you guys, don't know where we'll end up. Maybe we have 10, maybe we have 14, don't know. But having the 12 picks gives us a lot of flexibility and a lot of opportunities, some things, and, and we'll see where it goes. But, Coach.
Thank you, Omar. I think the biggest thing for us as a coaching staff, it's been great to get acclimated here in Pittsburgh. The draft process has been a lot of fun, frankly, for us. Just the involvement. I think the normal process that I've been exposed to is, you have profiles and you come together, and obviously, the profiles that have been here for decades is something that we'll continue to adhere to. So that was, I thought we got off to a really good start there. The coaches have, kind of done double time with the draft process, connecting with the personnel staff. I've really enjoyed Omar and his staff and the meetings that we've had. But the second part is, we've been able to, get ready for our players. We've had 2 weeks, and today we've had a lot of excellent work. I really appreciate the time and energy and the effort the players have put into the voluntary work, because end of the day, football's football, but everybody talks about it a little differently. Common language is very important, and it takes time in the beginning. It's always it's more monotonous and tedious in those first months, and then I really applaud our players for being here and taking advantage of the opportunity to connect. And lastly, I think anytime Western Pennsylvania has a chance to show itself off, it's a great thing. So. I know personally, just through family and friends, and what the draft will bring to our great city, and to show it off, and it'll be exciting. I had a chance to experience it for a day last year, and this is going to be awesome. So I'm definitely excited for the week and for Pittsburgh.
All right, questions?
Right, this is third meeting you've gone through a draft process with. Is the formula, the execution, the process similar, different? How does it differ here than others?
I mean, a lot of similarities, but not the same. I think I could really probably say that about how you practice too. So I mean, I think those are the things you always work through, and you appreciate what's here because of the continued success of the Pittsburgh Steelers for, the last 50 years, 70 years, 76 years, or somewhere in there. But so I think that is important, because I don't think you have the time or the energy, and I don't think it's energy well spent when you throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I think it's important to have an understanding of what's here, and obviously with Omar and our familiarity. So I thought it was pretty smooth the way it transitioned. But yes, every draft situation has been a little different, because it has always stayed the same. Obviously in the first and the second situations that are in. But I really like the way the coaches connected with the personnel staff, because that's a process. That's not always super smooth, and sometimes it takes a little longer than you'd like. But I thought both staffs did a really good job.
On the topic of potentially trading up, Omar, a question for you, then Mike, if I can, a follow-up for you on it. But Omar, with the bulk picks that you referenced that you have, what's the easier and more feasible scenario? Is it potentially moving up from where you are? Is it sticking and picking to maybe come back in again? Like with what you got?
I think it's a good question, Tim. I think it's probably too early to really say that. I mean, we're all options are on the table. We're open to whatever's best for the Steelers. But I think I wish you could ask me that question as the draft progresses. Obviously, you won't be able to. But I think as the draft starts and we see how things are going, we'll make that determination.
Mike, do you have a preference, like looking to move up to get an even higher quality player? Or are you a guy that wants as many people that you can get your hands on as possible? Are you one that prefers to load up with more people?
I believe in draft and develop. I think that's the bloodline of how you grow your roster. I love the roster that's in place here. I think we have a very good mix of, younger players and established veterans, and then to add a full draft class and obviously being above 10, I think would be awesome. Personally, I've always felt that, the more players you have, to develop, particularly younger players, I think it definitely is, for the long term, is a good process, and it's frankly, my 18-year head coaching career speaks to that. So I'm a big believer in draft and develop.
Mike, what have you guys learned about this quarterback class in particular? It was originally supposed to be like this great class, and it's been talked about as not being as great now. What have you learned about the guys that you've met with, and how excited are you to possibly get one of those guys?
I think consistently that I've seen over the years is in every draft class, particularly quarterbacks, kind of comes to this at this time, and I know it has for me personally. I think you got to decide really, what do you want? What do you believe in? What's the direction of your offense? I as a quarterback coach, would like to work with any of these guys. I feel that way. I think it's, I believe in starting lines and, floors and ceilings and things like that. But, where you play, it's, it was nice to be out there on the field today, and, we're blessed with a nice wind. And so just to remind you that, to get the ball in the outdoor, because I've been an indoor guy for 5 years. So, so I think it's really, you got to decide what you want, and I think this class has that. It's not the biggest class that I've seen, but I think you just got to decide really what you're looking for, and there's guys there for that.
Or a couple other GMs have said they think the first round especially is going to have a lot of trade. It's going to be kind of a chaotic one. Have you gotten that sense that there could be a lot of movement, especially on night one?
I don't know where it's going to shake out. The one thing that's been interesting is that, they moved the first round from 10 minutes to 8 minutes. So naturally, we've been having, I think, a little maybe more conversation than we normally have, just to kind of set parameters of, what the value is necessarily if you move up to this spot or trade back. And so I think that there's more conversation, but, until we get there, I'm not sure, how that's going to go.
How significant is losing that 2 minutes for those first round picks?
I mean, it depends who you ask. I mean, I'd love to have the 10 minutes, but hey, it's the same for everybody else. So 8 minutes is what it is. But those 2 minutes, man, it feels like an eternity sometimes. But
You only get
we'll
40
make it work.
seconds to call a play. Oh, come on, it's not that bad.
How do you feel about the 8 minutes
We'll be
first?
fine. We'll be fine.
Is there any position that's kind of jumped off the board that maybe surprised you throughout this process?
Well, I think there's always, positions where, the volume, and I think, clearly, and I'll let Omar speak to that because I don't want to give up anything on the board here. But no, I definitely, I think there's some very deep positions, and it's always interesting to me on when the run starts, on those positions. And, like last year with the offensive line, because kind of once it starts, it usually, it continues to go for quite some time. So that's something I think will be very consistent this year.
Just to follow up on Broderick Jones, how much has he been able to do at practice, and how does the uncertainty potentially affect your draft plans?
Well, let's say, today was day one of that, so obviously he's limited. So it's early in the process, Mike. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, the reality of it is what we're trying to accomplish right now. He's in the medical group. You have a number of guys that are in that group. We're really just trying to establish common language. We went over the fundamentals of football today, so they haven't changed. But how you talk about them, how you drill them. So we're just really taking the steps of starting at the beginning and going through it. So and he has participated, so that's not a problem.
Is your board finalized yet? Are you guys doing anything different this year? Because I know you would rank your top guys and not take into consideration what other teams would do. Are you doing anything like that different this year?
No, process has been very, very similar. Obviously, we've got some pretty good ideas that Mike has shared from other places he's been, and but for the most part, it's been the same.
Omar, one part of the process has been different this year. You guys have usually had a pretty strong presence on the pro day circuits in years past, but maybe not as much this year. Was that just part of the transition from Mike to Mike, or is that something you guys are going to de-emphasize?
No, definitely not. I mean, it's just part of the transition, and the timing of some of these pro days, and just certain things didn't work out, but it's important.
Mike, overall, you talked about adding a bunch of a big rookie class, specifically quarterbacks, because of their importance, because you work with them. Is there enough time, reps, you spread yourself thin? If you have two developmental quarterbacks or relatively young quarterbacks, is that feasible the way you do things?
Well, definitely, and that speaks to the staff. There's a number of coaches that have been with me in the past. We pulled up some old Tom Arth quarterback school film from 2006 today. So, so we're fine as far as the training environment that we're trying to establish. But yeah, I think it's a position. We speak on it as being, the most important position in football, and I think it's important to always try to add to it if you can, but it has to fit.
Omar, as long as you've been here, you've never drafted a guy number one who hasn't been in for a top 30. For as long as you've been here, do you recall? Because I think Kevin once said that's never happened. Do you recall?
You know what? I'm not sure, Jerry. I mean, I don't know. Some of that's probably coincidence or just comfort you feel, but I wouldn't say that our pick would have to be someone that was in for a 30 visit. Yeah.
Mike, you ever take anyone that wasn't in the top 30?
Yeah, and to be honest with, I've seen the 30 visits. It's been utilized three different ways, and I think the way we utilized it here was awesome because, at the end of the day, you want to have so much information on every prospect. So and there's different reasons to bring players in. So I think that's and I can't speak to the past, but we're not just bringing in the guys we want to draft. I mean, I've been at three places and that was never the absolute. But there's a lot of times there's medical questions. There's other things involved in why you bring a guy in.
Smoke screen?
No. Every. I'm not sure, but I can tell you, these guys that were in here, they're in here for a reason, and smoke screen's not one of them.
Omar,
Good question, though.
Omar, how does not having Aaron signed impact your draft?
We still evaluate it. That doesn't change our evaluation process. We're still putting the guys up where they need to be, and we'll just see how it shakes out.
Omar. Often you kind of talk maybe like you're calling teams maybe interested in other players. Is anybody calling you guys interested in players? I know you're not going to say who, but are you getting calls?
Yeah, it happens every year, and it happens throughout the year, not just now. People call and say, hey, any interest in this player, in trading this player, or they'll call and be like, hey, we have this player, we'd consider you guys interested. I mean, there's a lot. I'll tell you this, I'd say probably less than 5% of those calls actually turn out to be something. But yeah, calls happen every week.
You
Mike,
both
with,
talked about the excitement level of having the draft here in Pittsburgh, but Mike, for you specifically, to have your first draft as the Steelers head coach in Pittsburgh, how much meaning does that have for you to have this experience with the draft right down the road here?
I mean, it's great. Frankly, it'll be more important to my family, you know, as far as being able to enjoy the draft and so forth. We're going to be busy. You know, I laugh because, you know, my mother asks me every year if I'm going to the draft, and I say, no, I'm going to be in the draft room again for year 33. But, you know, we don't go to the draft, so. But, no, I think it'll be great for everybody to experience it.
Mike, have you learned enough about Spencer and Dylan Cook, along with what you already know about Hoffman on the left side of the line, to feel comfortable is probably a poor word, but if the board would not fall that you don't go high early with offensive line, do you think you have enough there?
I would say confident would be the word I would use to describe our offensive line room right now, because we have an excellent group of veterans. We've got some young guys in there that are going to be good players for quite some time, so I really like the way that blends together. But, you know, I think clearly O-line, D-line is something you got to always continue to try to add to.
You guys brought in Makai Lemon. Sorry, I apologize if you're done.
You good?
I got it. Good enough.
You guys brought in Makai Lemon, obviously one of the top receivers in the draft class. What was you guys' impression of, you know, how he presented himself to you, and what he brought to the table?
Yeah, he was outstanding. You know, he really was. We had a chance to meet him in Indy, and then, you know, he was here and spent some quality time with him. It was excellent time spent.
Omar, I want to follow up on Brooke's question about trades. And you said about there's been more internal conversation because of the shortened period, or more conversation. Did you mean internal conversation or between GMs?
No, between GMs. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Omar, in terms of moving up in the draft, is there like a cutoff point where you know you can't get past because it's just going to cost too much?
That's a good question. You know, so I'll say yes, but the reality is when you're on when it's draft day, you always want to just, it never hurts to ask, because you never know when someone's really dying to get out, and maybe the value will be different than what you thought it would take, and the same going backwards. So you at least always inquire.
Omar, you talked about there being a lot of conversations ahead of time. Is it your sense that this may be a draft that's a little bit easier to trade up in? It seems like there's a lot of teams that have been speculated as maybe wanting to move down.
I think it's similar to other years where there's a lot of conversations, and most of those don't even happen. But
Mike, sorry.
Go ahead, Jeff.
When you put your roster together in September, and there's a fourth or fifth year guy that can help you now as a backup, as opposed to maybe a sixth rounder rookie who shows a lot of potential. How's the line that you walk there and putting the team together, the final cuts?
I mean, it's a line that you hope you have to walk, because you know those are good challenges to have when you're deciding on, you know, how many guys you can put on the 53, and you know, I've always viewed it as the 68-man roster, you know, but there's also the risk of getting a young player, particularly a 6th-round pick, to the practice squad. But there's a number of filters, I would call them, you go through when you get in those types of spots. You know, frankly, you know, everybody has to have 2 jobs. You know, that's something that when I look at players, you know, position flex is very important, simply as the offensive line, as it's been asked. Because you play 17 games, the ability for an offensive line to have 5 starters line up and play together, you know, week in and week out, it just doesn't happen as much anymore. So I think all those things come into play there, but at the end of the day, it'll be about value, because you do want to, you know, for the locker room, you know, if a player earns a spot on the 53, you like to see him rewarded, you know. But there is a chess match that, you know, Omar is very much at the point there when you talk about can you get this young guy to the practice squad, you know, and I've been part of, I've lost good players, you know, at that moment that you've tried to get to the practice squad. So, and I think every organization has looked at it a little differently on, you know, what type of player to have on practice squad. Some, you know, because since the pandemic, you know, the practice squad has been utilized differently, and I think the number being as high as it is now is a real benefit to us as far as roster development.
Mike, you talked a lot about inside-out flex at wide receiver. What does it take for a wide receiver to have inside-out flex rather than just be a slot guy or just be, you know, a specific outside player?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, number one, it's just like anything, you start with the physical traits, you know, the play inside and outside. I think historically, when you talk about a slot receiver, you know, the first thing you think about, can the guy run an option route? You know, because that's really what slot receivers were known for. In my experience, I've always looked for the guy that was athletic enough and had the ability to win outside the numbers. We call it the Audubon, you know, the ability to win out there and then transfer that size and skill set inside, because I think there's a huge benefit to that, because he is capable to do more and frankly, hopefully be a good option receiver, because that's a big part of playing in the number 2 and 3 spot. But, you know, I just never ever viewed having a smaller receiver just to run slot plays. I don't like to play that way, or I don't play that way, frankly, and because our offensive system is built around making a quarterback successful. And when you have to run concepts in the pass game dictated on this receiver can do this and this receiver can do that, then you don't have the ability to move around them as much. So when you can move players around, now you challenge the defense and you can create more matchups and you keep things simpler for the quarterback. So sorry for the long answer, but that's how I view the slot.
Mike, guys, 2 more. Where'd the Audubon come from?
Actually, Joe Witt, you know, that's what he called it out there. You know, it just, you know, I think like anything, when you're teaching, you try to, you know, we call buckets, you know, put things in the buckets. So, you know, you got the Audubon and, you know, you got the middle of the field and the corner route is heaven. 7s are heavens, you know, 7 routes corner route. So you have things like that. You kind of, you know, clump those things together.
Mike, with that last one here, last one.
Omar, what has to happen for you to feel on Saturday like, hey, we really got this one. This was a good draft for us, and you had those feelings in the past at the end of the draft day?
You know, I trust our process. You know, I'm confident saying right now that when we're done on Saturday, you know, we'll have gotten 10, 12, 14 players, whatever it is. It's just, I feel really good about where we're at right now and all the work we put into it and how the board is stacked. And I wish the draft was right now. You know, we're ready for it. And I just, you know, I trust the process and it's been good. All right, thank you.
Just a reminder, Coach will be available tomorrow at 1.
All right. So, yes. I mean, it's odd having Omar and Coach Mike McCarthy instead of Mike Tomlin. And I guess not a lot of it's going to be different, seeing as how it's the same front office with a different coaching staff. You know, it's just going to be, okay, Mike, what do you like in players? Brian, what do you like in players? Patrick, what do you like in players? Once you get late enough in the draft, Danny, what do you like in players? Because if you can use we have 3 7th-round picks. If 2 of them are a returner and a punter, like, you know, that's not the worst thing in the world. Or you bring in a punter for as an undrafted guy and say, okay, Cameron, here's your competition. Go win it. So, but yes, that is it for this video. If you guys did enjoy it, please do leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, and I'll see all you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.